Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well. Today we've got a great episode. If you are a new listener and this is the first time you have listened, hello, welcome. And if you are a regular, thank you for tuning in again. Today we're going to fly through, hopefully. I'll try and make this as short as possible because I know if you are in this position, you are going to be very stuck on time. This is about, and this is for you, if you are making 500 grand a year in revenue and you're like, what should I be focusing on? Maybe you were tempted to work with me because you're like, I want to know what she thinks I should be focusing on. I'm going to tell you today, so you don't have to hire me. I'm joking. I would still hire me. I would listen to this and then book in straight away and apply to work with me and be like, right, we need her, we need this. This is going to really help us in our business. But if you're neither of those and you're just listening because, all the things I'm about to say will help you at any stage of business you're in, then let's go. So let me just get myself prepared for this because we're gonna really dive in here to the things that you need to focus on. If you're at 500 grand a year in revenue, there are some things that you really need to think about in order to make your efforts worth it and actually tip it over, because you're ultimately at a point where, depending on your industry, depending on your profit margin, this is going to vary somewhat in what I'm about to say. However, you're at a kind of tipping point where you have to make a decision of, are we staying here? Are we tripling? Are we quadrupling? Are we 10xing? Are we going beyond that? What is the kind of aim of the business? What is the long-term plan? What's the vibe? So first up, you need to focus on and understand categorically in your head, how aggressively do you want to grow? Do you want to grow? Are you stabilizing? Are you expanding? Are you growing in a fast pace? Do you want to keep aggressively growing? Do you not? Maybe you've been at 500 grand for like 3 years and so now you're like, maybe we should do something. Maybe you've been through the stabilization process. But wherever you're at with that, I need you to get very clear on it. Because as soon as you come to me and say, right, I want to work with you, that is one of the first questions I'm going to ask you. Where are we at here? What game are we playing? Every single one that I've just explained is valid, is fine, is totally good. But what you need to really understand is that every single choice you make either gets you further to that or further away from it, and they contradict each other if you're going to do different things. Yes, some of them will overlap, but a lot of the decisions that I make for individual businesses is based on the answer to that first question. Because the order in which you do things and the kind of depth in which you complete them in changes depending on that point. However, you've now made that decision. The next thing you need to really focus on is spend time creating a long-term growth strategy and planning system that actually works, and you're looking for the next 3 to 7 years. If you can go beyond that, fantastic. But for some people at the 500 grand a year mark, they can't look beyond 3 years. Some people find that just too much. Some of you might get to 7. 10 years can be a long time. And it just depends where you're at. And this is what I essentially do with people, and really thoroughly do it so that people fully understand, right, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is what the plan looks like for X years. Now, I'm talking like revenue mapping for that amount of time. I'm talking about going deep into profit margin, share, if you're going to look at, other people in the business. Do you have investors? Do you not? Most of the people, if you're listening to this, you're not going to, which is great. That's cool. That's who I really specialize in working with. But really understanding what is the plan for you. And this long-term growth planning situation needs to be solid. It's got to be in depth. It's not just a case of you on a one afternoon randomly thinking through a few things. This is an ongoing process. And this is why people hire me and work with me one-on-one and one-on-one consultant, because this is ultimately what really shifts people's businesses. Yes, and some of the work we do is around firefighting and is around immediate kind of reconciliation and looking through the business and pulling it apart and helping them. But there's also a huge amount of this work that is about you getting really clear and then us getting solid on your next steps and what the plan is beyond a 12-month period. The third thing from this point is you then need to look in terms of the business right now that you have that's operating at your team. And we need to do a consolidation process. And you need to really look at, how do we get the most out of every single team member? Are you already doing that? Is it working? Have you put things in place that is actually pulling away from that? That's what I see a lot. People at 500 grand a year, you can have a team and they can be working somewhat all right, but you've kind of added things into the business that really just doesn't make sense. And from an outsider's perspective, I can be like, hang on a minute, why are you doing that? Why don't we try something else? There will be a period where you feel quite uncomfortable with that and you might be like, oh God, I don't know why I want to do that. Like, what's she talking about? But, if you can lean into that and we can explore things, that can be really huge. The other thing with your team is the long-term planning piece. Your team at this point is probably the most sticky point of the business. It's the most issue. It's the thing that takes up the time. It can be the thing that's really causing conflict. Now, this might not be the case if you're a one-man band. Great. If you're not a one-man band, don't worry, fabulous. But if you're not and you have a team, whether that's employed, freelance, contracted, whatever your team looks like, dual aspect, whatever, this is the bit where you've got to get really clear, because you can get to 500 grand by being really scrappy. But if you want to go beyond that and you want to go much further, say you want to get to like 5 mil or you want to do 50 mil a year, then you've really got to start thinking about long-term team planning, long-term talent planning. And I don't mean that from a perspective of where are you going to find these people. I am talking from a position of what does the business look like? What is the business structure? What does the team look like? Where are we mapping people to go? What is the growth situation? There is so much for us to dive into in that area that you need to be focusing on. Number 4, the next point of this is operations. Your operations at 500 grand is likely to be a complete shit show, to be quite honest, unless you've built it really intentionally from the ground up. Most people at 500 grand are going to have really rocky operations, rocky systems, rocky processes, and mainly SOPs is the big thing that's screaming out to me, right? So at this point, often your standard operating procedures and processes need to be so tight, and they often aren't. And often they need changing. Sometimes they might have been done at the 100 grand mark, or they might have been done when the team was 5, but now you're at 20. They need changing regularly. Or not changing, but reviewing and tweaking. And really kind of making sure that they make sense. Often the biggest issue we've got at 500 grand is if you are actually using your SOPs, which is great if you are, and you're using them well, often if the quality of the SOP in the first place is not there, and is causing more problems, then you're just going to end up with your efficiency rate so low. You could be wasting so many minutes. Like, think about it, 10 minutes of each process of every single person who's doing that process over a week, over a month period. It's a nightmare. You can be wasting, literally just draining money out of the business. So this idea of an SOP review and an SOP kind of sit down is really important. And that might take months. Let's be honest. Okay. I'm not saying you have to do that in a week. I'm not saying you have to do it in a day. I am not saying you have to sort it all out there and then, but you do need to look at that, and that is a process. And actually, you will get better and better at it as you get more involved. The other thing I will argue, which again is slightly controversial and some people agree and disagree with me on this, is SOPs are great, full stop, they are, but if you and getting other people to write them, great. I'm not saying that you need to sit there as the CEO, as the founder, as the director and write every single one, because that doesn't necessarily make sense for everybody. But I do believe you need to be involved with it in some way. As in, you need to read them, you need to actually understand what's on there, and you need to kind of somewhat approve to say, yeah, I get it. Now, I know that's a big ask for if you are someone who's making 500 grand in your profit margins, you work on a low profit margin, and therefore you have a lot of different things going on. That's going to be a big ask for you. It's a big ask for anyone. But I really do think it adds a level of understanding. We often talk about, as someone scales a business, the leader can feel very detached from processes and day-to-day goings on, and it can get quite lost in translation. One of the ways that you can do that to really help you is to really look at your SOPs and your processes and really, I'm saying SOPs and processes as if they're the same thing. Obviously they're not, but I'm just talking about in terms of generally using a really solid set of SOPs can really guide the business and you being connected to the core mission of what you're doing and how you're delivering it. Because actually, there's so much power in you looking at something and saying, well, why are we doing that now? We used to do it like that, but we did it like that because there was 5 people in the team. There's now 25 people in the team. It should be a different process. Or now we have resource to do X thing, or have X system, or pay for X software. That means that the SOP is shortened by 20 steps. How incredible. There is so much that you taking time to look at that will benefit you, especially if you want to go from 500 grand to like $1 million or 5 million. That change and that shift comes from you really understanding that point of where you're at. Number 5. I don't know if we're doing numbers. Are we doing numbers? I don't think we are doing numbers. Never mind. So number 5 on my sheet. We need to look at, you want to focus on streamlining your sales process even more than it already is. Now, some of you will be shouting at me because you're like, well, we've got 500 grand, like, it's great, it's really good, it's, you know, it's working clearly. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. But is it fully working? Or is it working, but you're kind of capped? Or it's working to a degree, but then you're like, actually, we want to double the business or we want to triple the business, and therefore, actually, it's not working. Just because something works doesn't mean it's the best way. It doesn't mean it's the only option. And so I really come into businesses who are thriving and doing really well and will audit their sales process. I look at your sales process. I look at your sales strategy. I look at your whole journey, and I go through and I audit it and go through with a fine tooth comb and suggest different ways. And then we actually implement them and look at how does that work, and we kind of tweak. And just for context for this, like, I do this for people and the impact from that is absolutely massive. Like, I've had conversion rates go from, you know, they were at 50%, which is all right, to like 85%. Now, many of you, if you're at that point, will understand that is the pure impact that can have on your business, your bottom line, your team spend, like so much of that, because that was 85% with a couple of, like, not just one person, not just the founder doing sales. So in terms of the sales piece, that is really big. And I think it's really important because a lot of people get quite lazy at the 500 grand a year mark. They're like, well, whatever we're doing is working, so we don't need to change that. And that's why I'm like, no, don't go down that avenue. Please try not to. Please stay focused on that stuff. The next thing, I told you I was going to be quick here today. I know if you're listening to this, you need a juicy episode, and you need to get it and you need to leave. Pick one thing and sell. I've put sell the shit out of it on here. I was going to try not swear, but I've put sell the shit out of it. So that's what I'm going to say. But sell it. Now, you do not have to only sell one thing. And I'm not saying only sell one thing. But what I am saying is you pick one thing and you focus on that being the main thing. And yes, you can go and make 5 million a year from 10 different products or 20 different offerings, or yes, you can go and, you know, make 50 million a year from multiple different offerings. That is true. But in terms of what I'm going to suggest to you and what makes the most sense and what is nice for your team, let's just bring it around to that as well. Sell one thing that is your main thing, that is the thing. You've got all the time in the world. I think one of the reasons people love selling loads of things because they feel like they're in a rush and feel like they can't do everything. Like, we're doing projects now in the business that I've wanted to do for 3 years. I just couldn't do them then. And I had to say to myself, like, don't. And there's stuff I want to do now that I can't do that is on the plan to do in 3 years' time, 5 years' time. Because I can't do everything. I don't have all the time in the day. It's just impossible, right? And I think people really get hung up on this, especially when it comes to selling products. Just because you can make 6 figures from a certain revenue stream of selling something doesn't mean that that is the best thing for your business. Stop focusing on how do we just add in terms of revenue, and look at how do we strategically add revenue and grow revenue in a way that supports the business. Now, that might be that you do have another revenue stream that actually does make perfect sense. But what really worries me is when I come into a business and the plan on the growth plan is to start adding loads and loads and loads of services and products and different things as their method to growing. That doesn't have to be your method. And actually, for a lot of businesses, doesn't make a whole lot of sense all of the time. So instead, I want you to really focus in on what is your thing. What do you do really, really well? What do you do that is beyond what most people can do? Where is your real kind of special element of what you offer? And then think about how are we going to sell that really well? Like, how do we sell it well now, but how can I get it beyond that? Because that's what it's about. It's about you increasing how good you can sell something and how much can you connect with your potential customer on a deep level. And I think there's so much to be said for that versus you just trying to create more and more work. Because ultimately, right, what happens is you just end up with a really disjointed process a lot of the time. And it gets really boring for the people and quite annoying for the people who have to be around you all the time and in your business all the time. And that's probably not something you're going to hear. It's not something they're going to tell you, but that is something that we hear a lot. So that is like true. You know, you need to be really clear in what you're going after. Now, next up, and the final piece I want to leave you with is a big one, is around refinement. And specifically, I'm going to talk about your messaging. So refining your primary and secondary messaging is really, really important at the 500 grand a year mark. The reason being is that often at this point, the business has changed somewhat. The business has adapted somewhat to this growth. So it's either like you're really strapped for time because you're doing everything in the business, or you've got a team, but therefore the messaging needs to translate that and needs to make sense and fit, right? Because sometimes people will get to this 500 grand a year mark and they feel like it's not fully fitting. It feels like the business has outgrown the message, or the business is beyond where you used to feel like it was. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, right, let's just completely refine the message. Now, often it doesn't mean that the messaging needs a complete overhaul, although that might be the case. Most of the time, it just needs a tweak and an upgrade and kind of a rejig to make it work for you. But please, 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 make sure the messaging is really linked to the one thing you're going for. Like, what is your one thing? What are you selling the shit out of? What is the thing that's like, yeah, that is what we're really good at? Make sure the messaging is so linked to that and is so clear and is so decisive around that thing. Because if you can sort that out, your customer acquisition cost is going to go down. Your customer acquisition cost will be much lower. And if it doesn't dramatically decrease, it's really going to help you get a much better quality of lead and quality of people who are coming to work with you. And that in itself is enough for you to be like, okay, yeah, that makes, like, the messaging piece is ultimately the bit that's really key in terms of what does it mean beyond X amount of years? Because your messaging can change, yeah? What I am not sat here saying is, let's plan your messaging out for the next 7 years. That is ridiculous. There is no reason for us to do that, because inevitably it will change. It should change. Businesses change. We need that. Yes, the sentiment's going to stay the same. Yes, your brand. I'm not talking about your brand. I'm not talking about the whole of your brand changing, but I'm talking about your messaging will change. And that's okay. There's a lot of other things we can plan for, and we can change, and we can put things in place to support you in other areas. But in terms of right now, here where you're at, if you are going for, I want to go from 500 grand to $1 million in a year, I want to go from 500 grand to 3 million in a year, how do I do it? Your messaging is got to be really high up there in terms of what are we actually saying and how are we saying it? Where is the kind of connection point for people in multiple different ways? It is not about you now just having one connection point with one message. It's about you having multiple messages that lead to one product or service that is the same and that connects multiple different types of people. Now, I would argue at 500 grand a year, you don't need to be creating messaging that is really complex to suit like 10 different avatars. You don't need to. You're not making enough money to do that. Yes, you could do it, but it's just not necessary. You just need a really solid, clear message. Maybe you want to have 2 or 3, but I'd argue if you get one that's really nailed, like, that is enough. That's what you need. You just need a singular, really solid message to link to your thing. Now, there are many other things that we could talk about here that I will, normally go down the road of. However, if you are making 500 grand a year in revenue, and this is like, you're thinking about, what are you came here today to learn something, to know something, those are the items that really stand out to me as if you've got to get those sorted and really look at and really dive into. At this point, it's really important for me to say to you, come and work with me. If you've listened to this and you've enjoyed this and you're like, yeah, do you know what, actually, this does make sense, or maybe some of it you've done, but some of it you haven't, this is what I help people with. You need to come and see me. We can work together one-on-one. We can do different options. Most people, if you're at 500 grand a year in revenue and you want to grow, or if you're stabilizing, like, stabilization also is very relevant and valid, but especially if you want to grow, you need to come and see me. You can work one-on-one with me for 6 months, and that would probably be the best option. And we can go on this journey together. And I will literally come and you basically get a coach, an advisor, and a consultant all in one investment. We will do a lot of strategy work. We will get all the bits and pieces out that we've just spoken about. We will really dive into what does the future look like? But you will also have the immediacy of a leadership coach, of being able to say, right, this is happening in the team. What do we do with this? How do we deal with that? How should we go approach this? You will also have me there as an advisor in terms of, what do you advise for X thing and X process? We do that. So there is a lot of support available for you. There will be a link below for you to apply. There is an application. I decide whether I want to work with you. I will decide whether I can help you or not. I have to do a bit of background digging to work out, can I help you or not? If I can't, I will not take your money. I will not let you join me. You know, my time's too precious to be doing that. It doesn't make sense for either party. But for the people that I do partner with, I fully, I absolutely love it. It's a joy to me. It's one of the most beautiful parts of my work. And I pride myself in being able to help you to really get to where you want to get to faster, and not have the process be really long and drawn out and take bloody ages. Some things might take ages. If you want to get to, 500 million a year, it's going to take us a bit of time. But, you can very much double your revenue. And, beyond that, we've had various amazing statistics and results from the last year. Just for some context for you, if you're listening, you're quite new to me, I have a really strong track record of incredible client results. If you want to read testimonials, you want to see videos, you want to speak to actual human beings, that is fine. You can come and just send me a message on Instagram at @may.james_, and we can connect you with someone in your industry. Or, if you want to just have a variety of industry testimonials, that is fine. In 2022, we had 100%, well, actually every single year since we've been in business, 100% of my private clients have had their best financial years to date. And that is a massive figure, right? 100% of them have had their best financial years to date. Bearing in mind, we've had some interesting times over the last few years. What I do works. It works in a massive, huge way. And if you are really serious about growing, and you're serious about your journey and showing up for yourself, your dreams, your goals, and also the people that work with you, and you want to create, a business, then a culture that is desirable and that people want to be around, then come and join me. And I look forward to kind of getting to know you and your business and diving in. And if you are someone who has a co-founder, or you have multiple directors that you're all involved in the business, I do work with people. If you're a family business, I also work with you. I've got a lot of different expertise that I can support you with. I actually work with my family as well. And yeah, so if you're not if you've got different setup that you're like, I know some people will not, consultants and things will not get involved with. The other thing to mention is, when you work with me, you pay an investment. That is the investment for 6 months. There is no profit share. There is no commission-based things. All of the results that you get, you keep the money for. You just pay me my flat rate. And yeah, obviously, if you want any add-ons and things, then we can add those on. But in terms of results-based payment, that is not something I do. You keep all of the profit and all of the revenue, which is fantastic. And yeah, I will look forward to speaking to you next week. Tune in, subscribe if you're not already, and I will catch you then. Bye.